25 years ago, the Soviet Union dissolved. The country broke into Russia and 12 independent republics, and the region transitioned from communism into a capitalist market. What ensued was arguably the biggest sell-off in global history, as the Soviet Union was partitioned and privatized in just a few years. The scheme was designed with close guidance from Western economists, and it allowed a few oligarchs to buy off USSR's wealth for cheap, while the region fell into economic depression and growing inequality. Here's how it worked. Overnight, on January 2nd, 1992, President Boris Yeltsin lifted price controls on 90% of traded goods and introduced a voucher system that gave citizens free potential shares of the country. The vouchers were set up to avoid concentrating wealth in the hands of a few, but many Russians were poor or didn't understand how the system worked. So they sold their vouchers to profiteers who were able to quickly buy up large portions of private companies. In just 2 years, 15,000 companies were privatized under the voucher program. To speed up the process, the Russian government created a loans for shares program that sold off the country's biggest natural resource firms for almost nothing. Yukos, an oil and gas company, was sold to Mikhail Khodorkovsky for $310 million, or just 6% of its original price. Sibneft, an oil company worth slightly less, was sold to Boris Berezovsky for just $100 million. The oligarchs that owned the banks that auctioned off the shares were usually the highest bidders. By 1995, both Russia's GDP and industrial output had dropped by over 40%, while new corporate bosses almost universally indulged in money laundering, offshore accounts, tax avoidance, and underpayment. At the same time, Russia's bourgeoisie had stashed more than $150 billion in foreign bank accounts, investments, and properties. Today, 110 individuals in Russia control 35% of the country's wealth. And who was behind this scheme? Well, the architects of Russia's privatization were closely advised on shock therapy by Harvard professor Jeffrey Sachs and his friends at the Harvard Institute for International Development, plus a little help from the IMF, the World Bank, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It's just one sad but important piece of history to remember, which must never be repeated.